Okay, so the question is, should I be speaking yet? Every app and coach seems to say speak from day one, especially if you're on YouTube. But if you do it too early, it can lock in basically a bunch of just issues, okay? And it can just lock in a broken accent, it can lock in broken grammar, so much stuff. So we're gonna walk through why we wait and why the silent period is not waiting and just wasting time. It's actually like loading the weapon that we intend to fire from later. So here's what we're gonna cover today. We're going to talk about why stay silent at all. Why does this matter? Second thing is how long and what do I do? Okay, I'm silent. What do I do with this? And third is when do I finally speak? You're going to get the whole picture here. Okay? These three main questions, and they're all going to unlock as we go through. So the main issue here is the empty cup. Some of you will have heard this analogy, but we're going to go through it, okay? You can't pour from a cup that you haven't filled. So speaking is the overflow of filling the cup, which is your brain, not the start. So why stay silent at all? A lot of people say speak from day one. No, do not speak from day one. Fill the cup first. So here's the way this works, okay? You get a bunch of input. You get a sufficient amount of input, and this basically racks up your listening hours. This is what you're timing through the app or through your phone or whatever you prefer to time with. I prefer the app because it tracks a lot of data and it's helpful looking back. Then this cup begins to fill, right? There's three cups that I typically talk about. We have the ears cup, we have the brain cup, and then we have the mouth cup. The ears cup is basically you listen to enough of the language, and what's going to happen is that cup fills, and then it's going to be able to overflow into the second cup. The second cup is your brain, meaning the stuff that you're still pouring into the ears begins to overflow into the brain, and now it starts making sense. You're not just listening to random stuff. Almost magically, I mean, I say magically, but this is just the way the brain works. At a certain point, you have this critical mass where now your brain starts figuring out all this content and starts organizing it, where now it begins to make sense. So you fill your ears, which fills your brain, and then eventually your brain will understand enough that it naturally overflows out of your mouth, just like when you were a kid, right? A kid's hearing tons of immersion, tons of input all the time, and then it's just kind of babbling, making sounds, which don't really correspond with knowledge in any obvious way. But then one day, they say a word that they're familiar with, that they've heard enough times. They say this mama, they say dada, or whatever they might say, and they understand this word corresponds with this concept. That the same thing will happen with you. Okay, so it goes from input, which happens from listening hours. You would then fill the cup, which then overflows in terms of speech. Okay, so input fills the cup, speech is what spills over. And again, I have one cup here, but really it's three cups. Again, you fill your ears, which will then fill your brain, which will then allow it to overflow out of your mouth. Force it too early, and what happens? Well, if you don't have this model of the language in your brain yet, no inner model, then the mistakes get hardwired. I talk about this a lot again, but it's the reason why you walk into a room, you turn on the light, and it's the same hand. You use the same hand every time to turn on the light. It's because your brain turned this into a habit. The issue with speaking too early is if you're incorrect, if the grammar's wrong, the accent's wrong, whatever is wrong, then you're going to turn that into a habit by accident. And it's way harder to unlearn something. Imagine if I told you, give an example. Imagine if I told you every single time that you go to turn on, go to turn on some device, like turn on your TV, let's say, use the remote with the other hand every time. It's going to be hard. You have this habit. So you need to build this inner model of the language, which comes from filling the cups. And then if you do that, then you can begin to self-correct. These mistakes don't get hardwired. Something just sounds off to you and you can correct it yourself. So fill first, right? We're filling this cup first. Oops. We're filling this cup first. And that is what's going to allow this to stack up. And then eventually you're going to be able to speak, which happens at the top. But if you rush to speak, you stack all these weird mistakes in it. And it can be very hard because not only are you basically turning these mistakes into habits, you're building on that foundation. So a lot of times we think of words as individual, okay? We think that we say, for example, I like to eat apples, okay? But really, that word apple might in your brain in some mysterious way be connected to the word like to or the words like to. So whenever you're want to express your desire to eat an apple, the sentence, I like to eat apples, comes out every time, rather than saying, I enjoy eating apples, or I prefer to eat apples. The way you express that sentence is actually connected in some mysterious way. So if, let's say, apple, the word apple itself, you were to mispronounce as like appel, let's just say appel, right? Then every single time you go to express something like I desire to eat something or I want to eat something, some other kind of connected idea that you didn't even realize has a connection might trigger the same mistake because it's built on this foundation of mistakes. So every single time you talk about desire or apples or whatever, there's going to be some mistake that's kind of connected together, and it's really hard to disconnect because even though we have in textbooks and in classrooms, we have this typical way that we talk about the language being built, right? We talk about sounds and words and sentences and paragraphs. It's actually quite a bit more complex than that. The way concepts are connected to one another and the way we can automate them to come out of our mouth. So if you build with a rocky foundation, you really don't know what you're pushing down into that foundation. Okay, so rushing builds your fluency on a broken foundation, like I just. Real quick, since you made it to the end, if you're done collecting apps and you actually want to speak your target language, this next part is for you. I acquired Mandarin in 182 days. I've helped thousands of people acquire their target language, and I took one of my students from 0 to conversational Italian in 61 days. I put the entire method into a free video called the Fluency Roadmap. It's in the description and in the pinned comment. Go watch it, it's completely free, and let me help you actually get there.